How do we reconcile belief in an all-powerful, all-good God with a world that is clearly riddled with pain, suffering, and ultimately evil? How do we reconcile the God that Christians worship with a child who is diagnosed with leukemia, or a tsunami that kills 10,000 people? And how do we reconcile a supposed all-loving God with murder and atrocities such as the Holocaust? Before we get into the finer details of this issue, I'd like to make it clear that this video does not aim to answer every single possible question that you may have relating to the coexistence of a good God with evil. Rather, I aim to address that which I believe most philosophers and theologians alike fail to address in response to this issue. That is that they often begin by giving a stoic, sort of purely logical response. And really the issue with this is that it misses the heart behind the question. It misses the questioner. You see, oftentimes the questioner is not a philosopher. Most of the time, in fact. They aren't a debater either. Usually, they're hurting. They've lost a loved one. Perhaps their parent has been diagnosed with cancer. Their child has passed away. Maybe they have had a miscarriage. They're struggling to conceive. There's all sorts of possible reasons as to why they could be asking this question. And by giving an answer that is based purely upon logic, we miss this very precious opportunity that we have been given to show someone the true heart of God. So what I want this short video to do is two things. Firstly, I want to define what the problem exactly is. And secondly, I want to meet the heart of the question, not just the logical side. Later videos will dig into the technical stuff, the moral problem, the natural problem, the Canaanite conquest, etc. All of those things are important, and of course they deserve their own separate videos. But for right now, I'm aiming to just provide what I believe is missing in the broader apologetic community. The problem, which I initially discussed earlier on in this video, and I began by giving a few examples of a tsunami and other things, is known as the problem of evil. Now there's particular sectors, as before discussed, of this problem: the moral problem, the natural problem, how do we reconcile God with animal suffering, and all sorts of other possible questions that we can posit. Stated clearly, the problem poses the following question: if God is omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnibenevolent, or good, then why does evil exist? If he can stop it, and he wants to stop it, then why doesn't he stop it? Moral evil refers to suffering caused by human choices, such as betrayal and murder, abuse, atrocities like I mentioned earlier, the Holocaust, etc. While natural evil refers to suffering that comes by, nature in essence, things that are seemingly built into the structure of the cosmos. Earthquakes, for instance, cancer, disease, and things as such. Both of these are real and obviously observable in the world, and both press the question: how can this coexist with a good God? Now this is where most responses will immediately turn to explanation. Things such as free will, the necessity of a stable natural order, things of that sort. The conditions required for genuine love, for instance, and moral responsibility. Don't get me wrong, those arguments are important. They do matter. They are not just dust, but they miss the point, as I said before. Think with me for a second. You're standing next to someone you love in a hospital bed. They are about to pass away. Perhaps your spouse, a child, a grandparent, a parent, a friend, whoever it may be. How would you feel if in that moment you sought comfort and you were met with was a purely logical response to your grief? How would you feel if your only comfort was, this must occur because free will demands it? Furthermore, we may conclude that there is no God because evil and suffering exists, and perhaps we feel as though we've solved an intellectual tension in doing so, good God, bad world, impossibility, right? But at the same time, we've absolutely removed the possibility of ultimate justice. To cite the words of Oxford mathematician John Lennox, the cry for justice from places like Auschwitz becomes, in the end, a cry into silence. End quote. All those people, those millions of people who suffered immense evil at the hands of the Nazis, are met with what? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. A black screen. By removing God from the picture, we have removed the possibility of any ultimate hope. There is no heaven, there is no hell, there is no justice, there is no peace, there is no rest. Contrary to popular belief, Christianity in fact does not remove suffering from the picture, quite the opposite in fact. Nowhere in the Bible is a life free from pain, suffering, hardship, you name it, offered. But it does offer something else. It offers the hope, it offers the assurance that suffering is never ultimate and that justice is never gone. on. And this brings us to what I believe is the deeper question that we should be asking. Now, before I get into it, I never want to pretend that I thought of these things out of my own with no external input. Of course, I have read books, I've watched lectures, I cited John Lennox earlier. And so everything I'm saying now has probably been said before me, and definitely certain things have. Instead of only asking, how can God and evil coexist? Perhaps we should be asking, is there any reason to believe that the author behind all of this, not to say that God is the author of evil, a world of beauty and bonds, the God who has created a container wherein all of what we observe is possible, can he be trusted? Is there any reason to trust him? Now that question turns our attention to what I would say is the most central claim of Christianity, and that is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. If the resurrection did not happen, then Christianity literally collapses. But if it did happen, then everything, literally everything changes. If Jesus Christ rose from the dead, then the Bible is true. And if the Bible is true, then God exists. If God exists in the way that Christianity claims, which it seems that if all the other premises are already true, he does exist in the way that Christianity proclaims, then we have God on a cross. In that event, he is no longer a detached architect who has just created everything and stepped away. Not that he was in any case. But now we have a God who has partook in suffering, who has been victimized, who has done something so radical. If you ask a Muslim about the crucifixion, the resurrection, and the incarnation of God, they will say, how low, how belittling to say God was a man. You're claiming that God ate and slept and drank like we do? Yes. It's radical, and it should be perceived as radical. I mean, we have the God of the universe, the author of all creation, coming down onto earth, taking on human form, and dwelling amongst his creation, to the point where he even allowed them to nail him to a cross and kill him. That's radical. The reason that this is so significant is particularly because it means that suffering and death do not have the final word. It means that justice is not postponed forever. It would mean that there is hope beyond the grave. Now, of course, this is not a complete solution to this issue. As I have before stated, it doesn't answer every why or how, and it does not eliminate all of our pain. But I believe it reframes the entire discussion. The question is no longer simply, why is there suffering? How can these two realities be possible? Rather, it becomes, did Jesus Christ rise from the dead? I would like to just thank you for watching to the end of this video. And as before said, in the videos to come, I will be addressing the broader array of questions that arise from this core problem, this core observation. But in conclusion, I would just like to leave you with something. This is really the doorway. Before we dismiss God and the existence of God and the belief in God's existence, we really must challenge ourselves to examine the evidence for the resurrection. Because if it did indeed happen, as the Bible claims, the problem of evil is no longer a reason to walk away from God. Rather, it becomes a question that we ought to wrestle with in the presence of the one who has suffered with us and for us, and promises that justice will be final and that suffering will not last forever.